Okay. So with that, I'm going to call the Select Board meeting of Tuesday, July 10th, 2018 to order. And the first item is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any requested changes or amendments to the agenda?
Nope.
Hearing none. All in favor of approving the agenda as drafted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Next is approval of the minutes of our June 26, 2018 Select Board meeting.
I'll move.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Are there any requested changes or amendments to the minutes?
Nope, good.
Hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes as drafted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, citizen comments. It's our time to address anything that's not on the agenda, and I know, Irene, you have something.
My name is Irene Barna, and I have been a resident of Middlebury since 1975, and I'm questioning whether you folks have any status report on the bear situation. I haven't heard anything in about a week, but there have been many, many sightings in Butoff Acres. I can't even speak to Chipman Hill, but there's a mother bear and 3 young bears who are learning, because that's what little people do, is learn from their parent, is a neighborhood is an okay place to be. And because nothing bad seems to be happening to us. Now, is there any report on whether the fact that they haven't been seen in a little bit of a time, have they moved on? Does Fish and Game not know? What's the status?
Actually, Chief's here, so when we talked earlier, Chief, I forgot Chief was going to be at our meeting. He
Oh.
might have an update for us.
Okay, well, I've spoken my piece, so.
Okay.
We haven't heard from the bears in about 10 days. We haven't gotten a call or anything. The last call we got was one of the cubs was stuck in a storage shed out on Painter Road, so we went out and opened the door and let the cub out. And off it scampered into the woods. I'm guessing now there's a lot of forage and feed out in the woods, at least we've seen, so I'm guessing they're probably going back to where they're more comfortable and away from people. We haven't gotten a report at all. We don't monitor the bears. Fish and Game doesn't monitor them. We don't have tracking devices. There's actually a total of 6 bears. You know, the 3 cubs and the mother, but there's actually a boar and another sow out there running around as well. And they're all in that Munger Street, the Chipman Hill area. There's a couple of dens out there. Generally, they don't bother anybody. You rarely see them, but this spring, because of, I guess, a tough winter, they were getting into the neighborhoods where they could get easy pickings in the garbage cans and the bird feeders. Hopefully, people have removed them and stowed their garbage cans, because we haven't gotten a call, as I said, in about 10 days.
Encouraging. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Is there anyone else who's here for something that's not on the agenda? Okay, with that, Susan, we have an agenda item for you and the VTrans clearing out at the airport.
Hi, I'm Susan Shashak from East Middlebury resident, and I was hoping to find out where we are. Last time I checked, there was a letter that went off to VTrans, and was hoping that there was interaction and resolution. I know staff and our tree warden had supported having some trees planted to replace the understory, and I know Kathleen has been in contact with Dan, but has yet to sort of see information that he was going to be presenting. You had asked for a map, property map, and I'm just wondering where things are, and if they're not anywhere, can we kickstart that? I saw in the board packet that Kathleen made the suggestion to have Dan, is it Delabray?
Delabrie.
Come and speak to the select board, which would be great, but I'm not sure if that's how the board feels about that. I certainly have a lot of questions and things I'd like to ask him if he came.
Is there, we talked about planting some low-growing trees. Is there a number of trees that, is anybody familiar enough with it to know approximately how many trees we would look for them to fund?
I think what the request was to have Dan work with the tree warden to do that. He's been reluctant to do that so far as I can tell. Certainly Chris Zioli's on vacation right now, I think. So, but he had outlined a plan and was willing to actually donate his time to plant them. So I think it wasn't going to be a very expensive plan based off of that, so.
Right. I was just reading earlier Kathleen's comments that it sounds like Dan's willing to fund some trees, and we just need a plan that's acceptable. I think that the original trees that we were asking for, he felt were too tall. If I had a budget, maybe it'd be, rather than back and forth, if we just got approval on a budget that they could fund and be done with.
That would be great.
I happen to have a meeting with his one of his staff tomorrow with Trini Brassard, and so if I had an idea what we're asking for, it'd be really, it's too bad we're not kind of at that point. So I think what we need is just to have a budget that we're asking for.
Okay. So I guess it
So I
would,
guess I need to get, I'll socialize it with her tomorrow. It'll be my proposal, and I think if we had an idea of what the trees that Chris would like when he gets back, it sounds like he's willing to fund some trees.
He's willing to specify some trees, and Dan is willing to fund some trees.
Right,
Limited
and if
amount.
Chris is willing to plant them, I think we just need to move it to the point where we present him with a
Right.
budget,
that would be great.
is what it sounds like to me, but reading the
Yeah.
tracking of the discussions.
Right.
I don't think Dan's interested in coming back and doing the planting, but if we're willing to do the planting
Right.
and purchase the trees, given a budget,
That would work, I think, for everybody, so.
why don't I work with Kathleen and Chris and just try to get this done?
Okay.
Behind us?
That would be great, because,
Instead
As
of
much
letters
as I
back and
love
forth, I
coming
think
and-
it sounds
yeah.
like they're willing to fund it, and, if Dan's saying that he's willing to consider it, but that those were too tall, we just need to figure out what we need and what that budget would be, and
yeah, that sounds
Something.
great. As much as I love coming and spending time with everybody, I'd
I appreciate the,
much rather let you guys do your thing and I get to stay home. Okay, great. So I can just check in with Kathleen at some point and see where things stand, and if you need me to come in, I will, but otherwise it sounds like you can
Yeah.
take care of it.
I think we just need to move it to action, and
Mhm.
I appreciate you holding our feet to the fire on
Great.
this.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Did you?
yes,
Can I say something?
sure.
So two.
You want to come over here so that the recording gets you?
Yeah, come on,
Uh-huh.
we can't hear.
So two things. One, I'd be more than happy to go up on that bank and count the number of smaller trees that were taken down that shouldn't have been taken down. Because it's clear that the larger ones needed to come down, but the smaller ones, those are the ones in question.
Yeah, I don't think we're looking at a one-for-one replacement, if that's.
2 for 1?
I think we just need something that's a recommendation from Chris. If we start getting too nitpicky about it, I think it's all gonna blow up in our face.
Well,
So-
no, I understand that, but generally it's a 2 for 1 kind of thing. But the other thing is, I'm fairly certain the Middlebury Tree Committee would assist with the plantings.
Working with Chris?
Correct.
That's great.
Because he's part of,
Yeah,
well, we're part of him, and he's part of our group, so.
So were you guys, did you have a number of trees that you looked
I
at?
would have to go up there and count them, which I'd be happy to do. It's been clear cut.
Yeah.
And so there's been grass planted, or, some kind of grass is planted, but there should be trees up there.
So it sounds like we have agreement.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would work with Chris, because Chris is the guy we're gonna be looking for. But
Yep.
when Chris gets back, maybe you could touch base with
Yep.
him and help him put together a plan for us. That'd be great.
Oh, we'll have a plan. Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
Next on the agenda is Ms. Worthington from Housing Vermont regarding a merger of Addison Housing Limited Partnership with VTrans Limited Partnership.
Yes, I'm Rewa Worthington. I'm the Director of Asset Management for Housing Vermont. We're looking to ensure the longevity of these partnerships. They're both small, scattered site locations. And in order to defray certain costs, primarily the annual audit, if we merge the two properties, we feel that we can better provide affordable housing amongst all of them.
Are there any questions of her? It was discussed in our packet, and Kathleen, do you have some?
Just to add that Benj Putnam, the town attorney, prepared a more detailed agreement, which is in your packet tonight, that you would be giving me approval to sign.
I have that signed here by our
Okay.
I'll move that we authorize our town manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the consent to merger between Addison Housing Limited Partnership and the VTrans Housing Limited Partnership.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any other questions or comments before we vote? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Chief's got a proposal for a policy on access control to the communication tower on Chipman Hill, which I believe was generated based upon some experience of what happens when we don't control access.
Yeah, there was anarchy on the tower that's up there now. We were given the key because we were the only 24/7 place you could keep the key, and we had no idea who was coming and getting the key. People were going up there, putting up architecture up on top of the tower that didn't belong there. It was creating interference. At one point, they changed the locks to the building, and nobody could get in. We want to just exercise some sort of control over that. If we're going to be responsible for the key, then we'd like to have the authority to actually manage the key and come up with a policy or practice where we can actually control access to that tower. I think it behooves us to secure our equipment and protect the integrity of it so we don't have what had happened on the earlier tower. It is on the town land, or actually the town is representative of the land, so we're seeking the Selectboard to authorize the police department in this case, or myself, as to manage access to the tower, since we are given the key. And we've drafted a security policy internal that we're still working on, David and I, that we'll get together. We'd like to have a user group of the people that are on the tower, and we can get from them who has legitimate access to that tower, so we don't have that kind of chaos that's been going on up there. And the draft policy is pretty vague. It just essentially allows us to have acting on behest of the town to protect our assets on the tower.
Questions of Chief?
No, I'll just echo the importance of it, and we did talk about it in the Public Health and Safety Committee that we needed this policy, so I'm glad.
Yeah, ad nauseum, we've talked
Yeah.
about it. So we'd like to move it on and at least take care of this.
I'll move it, that we approve and sign the Select Board policy on access control to the communications tower on Chipman Hill.
Moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Thanks for the initiative on that, Chief.
Thank you.
May we have good reception.
Okay. Next is a license agreement with the National Bank of Middlebury for the use of Printer's Alley during construction.
Yes, this is something that the National Bank of Middlebury approached the town about some time ago, and that is allowing for the maintenance of Printer's Alley as a pedestrian way during construction. Since we will not take ownership until after the construction. Actually, we won't be taking ownership of this part. There's a 5-foot buffer zone between Printer's Alley and the bank. The bank would like us to maintain this during construction, and so this agreement allows for that.
Seems fair.
Are there any questions? Seemed to make sense to ensure that we had the legitimate right to use it, as well as protection of the National Bank's interests. If there are no questions, I'd look for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'll move to authorize town manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the license agreement with Middlebury National Corporation regarding public use of bank's reserved buffer on Printer's Alley for the duration of the bridge and rail project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Next is Seymour Street, Polk Mill Bridge Road Sidewalk Project. It's a request for a change order on engineering services to cover the additional environmental permitting and right-of-way acquisition work.
So this is part of the Polk Mill Bridge and Seymour Street sidewalk extension. This, even with this change order, we are well within budget for engineering services and the project budget overall. These services have already been delivered to meet deadlines for permitting and right-of-way acquisition. And so I'm asking for your approval to go forward.
I'll make a motion to authorize Town Manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign Amendment Number 2 to the engineering services contract with VHB for the Seymour Street, Polk Mill Bridge Road Sidewalk Project for a not to exceed cost of $13,015.48.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions?
So where are we, Kathleen, then?
So this is awaiting final approval from the Vermont Agency of Transportation. And once that is, we have clearance there, we will go to bidding construction. Hopefully this fall, we'll be in construction of this, and at the latest next spring.
It's exciting. It would be nice to get that project done. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Next is correspondence from United States Court of Federal Claims on an official notice of a class action suit regarding Payments in Lieu of Taxes Act. And Kathleen will walk us through that.
So we received notice of a class action suit having to do with national forest lands in our case. I look back over the last several years that are in question, and it looks like it's about a difference of just over $1,000 between the 4 fiscal years. And all we need to do to join the class action suit is authorize submission of a letter of interest. There aren't any attorney's fees associated with this.
Questions of
Well,
Kathleen?
There is. It'll be deducted from the final.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we don't have any upfront costs.
That's
but-
right.
But we probably aren't gonna see $1,000,
We aren't?
right?
Oh,
Once they take the
no.
legal fees out.
Oh,
So it's not a huge amount.
I'll make a
Sharing this
motion,
opportunity with you.
to authorize town manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the opt-in notice form as a class member to the legal action Kane County, Utah versus United States regarding the Payment in Lieu of Taxes Act, PILT Act.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments?
Oh, yeah, Brian, I have one.
Go ahead, Nick.
Okay, noticing that, while it's not much money, because I see that the Department of Interior administers this payment in lieu of taxes, and because I work with the National Park Service, and I'm actually at a park right now working, and they're an agency of the Department of Interior, I think it's best I abstain from this vote.
Okay, so noted. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? And we have one abstention. Next is to approve application for FY19 Vermont Agency of Transportation Highway and Stormwater Mitigation Program grant funds.
On this, staff has investigated several potential grant applications and is not recommending going forward at this time. This is the grant program that we had thought that we would apply for the street sweeper with, and now that is not an eligible expense. It was also identified as a potential source of funding for the Creek Road relocation, and we did not get a good response from the funding agency on the competitiveness of that grant application. We looked at several other administrative studies and concluded that we weren't prepared to go forward at this time.
So the thought for the municipal roads general permit is
Right, we're going to be working with the Regional Planning Commission on that.
on that, okay? So we will move on to request from Addison County Economic Development Corporation for a letter of support for Food Hub initiative. Fred?
Good evening. Good to see you all again.
Yes.
So we've been working on a lot of initiatives, but one of which is partnering with Acorn and a few other regional organizations to establish a food hub or a food venture center for Addison County. The vision is to have a commercial kitchen, shared kitchen, possibly shared freezer and cold storage, mentoring, an educational series, loans and grants, accelerator services, the whole gamut that's needed for to help farmers that are transitioning to different markets and get those products to market, and also for folks who want to go from kitchen to commercial. So there's models for this in Waitsfield. There's one up in Hardwick. The Intervale is probably the largest example of the one in Vermont. We think Addison County is perfect and poised for this effort, and so we're applying for several grants, and we'll be applying for more in the future to get it going. Our first grant is for TUSDA Rural Development for a feasibility and marketing study, and then we're also applying to Community Thrives, which is a platform really. The grant is actually from Rockefeller and Chan Zuckerberg Foundations. They're the ones putting up the money, and Community Thrives is just the platform that applications go to. But as I said, there'll be more applications in the future, probably this fall. So this letter of support would be used in all of those applications, showing support from the town of Middlebury. We got one from the town of Bristol and VTrans and Acorn and a few other organizations as well. So, appreciate your
Questions of
support.
Fred?
Great.
I think it's great. I know that it's been worked on for a bit. Do they look in this planning for the site location? It's not really to establish the need for it, right? Because we have established.
Well, there's no study that's been done to establish need. We know there's a need, but we need to, the first grant we're going for is to do a feasibility and a marketing study so that when we do go to other organizations or other federal agencies for funds, we can show that there's absolutely a need, and that will also help determine what services are required, and kind of the size that it needs to be, what exact, what the need is out there for the type of kitchen space you need, and it'll help narrow things down so that we can also go look. There's a couple of potential buildings that might serve the purpose, but we need to know a little bit more about what we're
Want to
looking for.
say where those potential sites
Sure.
would
I mean, we're looking at the north end of the, I don't know how you folks refer to it, the Standard Register Building or Connor Building.
Right.
That north end, that's kind of office space, that's a possibility. Last night, I went up and looked at a building that's right next to the firehouse in Vergennes. It's an old schoolhouse with a school district and a couple other, but it's empty now. So that's another possibility. But we're not tying our grant request to any particular site, but we're trying to find out what's out there, what's available.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll move it, that we approve and sign a letter of support for the proposed regional food hub serving Addison County.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
I would just say, when Kathleen and I went to that economic development conference, it was one of the presentations, I think it was the Hardwick
Hardwick,
one,
yep.
or Hardwick one, did a presentation in that conference that was a VLCT put on, and it was really interesting, and I think it would be, I don't think we need a feasibility study, I think we should just build it.
I know, I'm so ready.
Was the Hardwick one of the original farm to plate ones?
I think so.
I don't know.
There was a whole book about
Yeah,
how
there's
farming
two
saved the
things
town.
up there. There's a food venture center and the nonprofit that's more about policy, and that's kind of where the food to plate movement started.
Yeah.
The food, I forget the name of it. There's a nonprofit that's
Yeah.
attached to the food hub, their food venture center that has been working on these for 10 years now, this issue.
Well, thank you for
Yep.
getting this energized again and getting it going. If there are no questions,
No,
And
it's
we'll-
needed, and I'm glad you're doing it, yeah.
so with that, let's vote. All in favor of approving the letter of support signify by saying aye.
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 I,
Those opposed? Okay. Thank you, Fred.
Thank you.
Next is an amendment to the Comcast lease at Chipman Hill.
So this is not on the Chipman Hill Tower. This is near the town reservoir up on Chipman Hill. It is a lease with Comcast, proposed for an 5-year extension, and with an inflationary increase every year in the tower rent. It is under review by council, and there's some back and forth between the attorneys for the town and Comcast. But the basis of the agreement is solid, according to our attorney.
Pleasure of the board.
I'll move it, to authorize town manager Kathleen Ramsey to sign the amendment to the Comcast lease on town-owned property off Springside for another 5 years, from January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 I,
Those opposed? Okay. Check warrants.
Motion would be in order to approve total expenditures in the amount of $612,758.11, consisting of $234,713.82 for accounts payable and $105,691.24 for payroll for the period of June 17th, 2018 through July 10th, 2018.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I,
Those opposed? Kathleen, town manager's report.
I have nothing to add.
Oh, my God.
We're whipping through. We're going to make it to Festival on the Green and.
Board member concerns.
I'm good, thank you.
I'll go
Don't let
last.
us down. You're gonna go last? Okay. Heather? Nick, do you have something?
I have nothing to add, Brian.
Okay, let's,
Okay, very quickly. So, so in your packet, Kathleen referred to my explaining to you how we're handling our sidewalks and roadways with regard to shared use. So I just wanted you to look at the picture that was added to your packet late this afternoon, that's up on the screen now. So it features a picture of Main Street, and you can see that Main Street is a road that has no space for a bike lane, and it has a very wide sidewalk for the most part on both sides. And that what we're looking at is, access for everybody on these roads and sidewalks, and how do you make that work? So the town of Middlebury did a really good job in designing an ordinance for bicycles and other rideable devices not that long ago. And a bicycle is defined specifically in that ordinance as a certain kind of vehicle. And it had the wisdom to see that there are other rideable devices that are using our roadways and our sidewalks, and what about those? So the ordinance is very good about explaining what the deal is. And you have seen motorized wheelchairs, for example, on our sidewalks. Those should not go on a road, right? But a bicycle can opt. A bicycle can opt to be either on the road or on the sidewalk. And the deal is that if a bicycle is on the sidewalk, it has to observe certain rules. And if it's on the road, it observes other rules. So in the case of Main Street, we have a sign which I propose adding that makes it clear that when there's no shoulder and you don't really want bikes using the sidewalks, that you want them to use the road, that this sign really makes it clearer that bicycles may use the full lane. So if you go to the next picture, and I propose putting it on that lamppost, by the way, that you see right there in the picture under the Route 30 sign, so that it's right in the middle, pretty much, of Main Street. If you go down, this is called a sharrow. So these are stencils that are painted on the road to indicate that bicycles can claim the road. And we have these on Main Street. So these are good, but a lot of people still don't understand what they mean. So when you couple that with a road sign, like I just showed you, it makes it clearer, what you're intending the bicycles to do and where you want them to go on Main Street. It also says that you're bike friendly. It's kind of cheap advertising for saying we love and welcome bikes. We're a bike-friendly hub, and we know that that attracts economic, hopefully, development. We know that people are seeking bike-friendly and pedestrian-friendly cities, and we want to be one of them. So that's a sharrow, and we will be painting those again. They've become faded, and Bill tells me that he's in the process of ordering a new stencil, and those will be, redone. And we're going to make it clearer where the beginning and the end of those sharrows are, so you'll start to see that on Main Street too, so that'll be clearer. If you go down one more picture, you'll see me in a wheelchair. So this was part of that exercise that we did.
Nothing happened to you, though.
Nothing
Yeah, right.
happened. But it's just looking at how are our sidewalks functioning. And how are they functioning, not just for pedestrians, but those that have restricted mobility, like if you are in a wheelchair. And some people have motorized wheelchairs, or some people have this kind, they have a full range of other devices that they might be using. And our sidewalks are a little bumpy in places, and we know that, and we are tracking that, and as we can fix them, we are. They are pretty wide, but what we're noticing is that there's more encroachment on the sidewalks, especially in Main Street, by sandwich boards and planters and maybe even benches, which are not a bad thing, but something that we just want to look at. So I talked to Kathleen about that, and maybe the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting might take up a general discussion about, use of the sidewalks for those other things. I know that people have enjoyed the little table and benches that are outside the community barn right now, where they're collecting some statements, and that people enjoy the benches in front of the post office. So there is interest in more seating along Main Street, but we just have to figure out how we're going to manage that. there used to be a bench in front of Yogurt City, and that was a lease arrangement between the business and the town of Middlebury, where the business agreed to make sure that they monitored that so that any litter that might accumulate around that bench would be taken care of. And I understand from Yogurt City that that bench was actually stolen. So they have not replaced that, but it's nice to have that. We have a new Actor bus stop by the Battelle block. That might be a nice spot in front of Edgewater Gallery to add a bench. Not a lot, but like, we just want to manage it. Like, we need a little bit of policy around this. And we also want policy around where the bikes can go. So there are stencils on the sidewalks on Main Street, in a very restricted part of Main Street in Merchants Row, that say that cyclists should walk their bikes in those zones. And we've added those stencils to Printers Alley. So if you've walked down there recently, you might have seen that those stencils were added, because it's very narrow there, and there's enough pedestrian traffic going into the Marble Works with the bridge construction that we don't want people to be startled. So we've done that. So that's just to give you a big picture of Main Street. And I'm just looking at Main Street downtown right now. There are other areas, like we've talked about, Exchange Street and such. So the conversation for Middlebury Safe Routes, or the Walk Bike Council of Addison County, and for the larger bike ped advocacy groups, is that you really want to be looking at your shoulders and managing your shoulders. So now I'm talking about outside of Main Street. And that when you have the opportunity to restripe, you want to restripe so that you have maximum shoulder width as possible, and that actually 1 foot could make a big difference. So a lot of our streets are striped for 12 feet from the center, and if you go to 10 or 11 feet, that can make a significant difference in widening your shoulder. And it also has the added benefit of calming traffic, because the tighter the lane, the slower the traffic will go. So that's called a road diet. And road striping, when you do it in sync with road repaving, doesn't cost you any more, but can gain you a lot, might even get you a bike lane or close to a bike lane. So it's just something for us to be planning for, particularly on Court Street, which we know to be the problem zone for a lot of our community. That's the school zone from the blinking light all the way to Hannaford's. So those are just some things that we're watching. And so some of these things don't cost a lot. It's just about good planning and having policy around what you're going to be doing. And then, of course, once you have done that with your shoulders, maintaining your sidewalks and shoulders is very important. And the town does a pretty good job, of that. And we're about to add a good street sweeper to our arsenal of equipment. That'll make a difference for keeping our shoulders maintained. It really does make a big difference. So that's a bit that I just wanted to present for you to think about. And if there's anything that you wanted to add to that or discuss, you could. Otherwise, let's keep going with making our buildings as accessible as possible and our community as bike pedestrian friendly as possible, because people want it.
So the bikes have an option of using the sidewalk or the road, you said?
Yes, so if
If there is a bike lane on the road, do they still have an option to go on the sidewalk, or they should not go?
they can, if they feel safer on a sidewalk. They're only restricted on Main Street in that one zone where you see the stencils on the sidewalk. And even then, just during business hours. So if you're nervous at night after businesses have closed and you feel safer riding on the sidewalk, even on Main Street, you could do that. So I always make a choice when I'm on my bicycle, whether I'm going to become a pedestrian or I'm going to become a motorist. If I'm going to become a motorist and use the road, and the ordinance says it, then you observe all the rules of a motorist. You stop at stop signs, you stop at stoplights, you signal your intent, you use a light at night, so you're just doing all the things that you would expect a motorist to do. If you dismount your bike and you become a pedestrian, then you follow the rules of a pedestrian. You're using the crosswalks. You're still signaling your intent to cross the crosswalk, making good eye contact with other users of the road. So we do have a lot of signs in Middlebury, which is good for Middlebury, that say share the road, but a lot of people really don't know what that means. That's why, for Main Street in particular, I think that this other sign that I showed you first that says bikes may use full lane makes it really clear. There's a lot of people still don't understand that that's really what we want bicycles to do in really busy, constricted areas where there's no shoulder, like Main Street. And that's what I do. I don't stay on the right on Main Street. I'm right in the middle on Main Street. That's actually safer, for everybody. So I'm always willing to take people on rides. If you want to ride with me, you're welcome to contact me through the Town of Middlebury website. My email is there, and I'll be happy to navigate you and teach you the rules of the road and our ordinance.
Thanks, Laura.
I'm just concerned about the ambiguity of that sign, says may use full lane. And, I walk a lot. I used to ride a bike, and I've given it up with other things. But I do have a concern when people are riding on the sidewalk. Sometimes they come right down the middle of the sidewalk, and you're walking, and you really don't, you can either walk sort of very close to the edge of the road, or you're pushed over to the side. So it does seem to me that there needs to be a courtesy that when you're sharing, and the same, it seems to me, in other words, there's a sharing when you have bicycles and pedestrians on the sidewalks. It has to be a sharing. I think in certain respects, maybe pedestrians are more vulnerable, but I think it's important. At the same time, I think there needs to be a sharing on roadways. In that respect, I would think that maybe one way of, you're right, share the road. If a person has never seen that before, they wonder, what does that mean? It might very well be to have something visual where you have automobiles and bicycles side by side, so they understand that you're sharing the road with bicyclists. And bicyclists in that respect are more likely, if there's a collision, to suffer much more. So I would suggest some kind of, perhaps the signage needs to be as unambiguous as possible.
Right, so on the bridge, there is a sign that has a bicycle over share the road. I know it doesn't have the other users. You can buy those kinds of signs that show all the symbols on the same sign, so I know what you're talking about.
I think it's important to make it as explicit as possible.
This full lane is in the roadway, not on the sidewalk, right?
Yeah, that's what they mean, I think.
Is that what it is for the?
Yes, and it's only, this is only
So
for
maybe,
only Main
now
Street.
yeah, but Victor is confused, so maybe the placement of the sign is the issue, because it looks like it's sitting where the sign.
You're talking about the full lane of the roadway. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, it's in the, we've got the Sharrows, and then when we get into the downtown, they're trying to encourage them to move maybe more to the center, where they're visible and not get crowded into the sidewalk.
Coming across the bridge is the sidewalks are narrow and the roadway is narrow, so you really do have a problem, it seems to me, that you want to make sure people understand who you're sharing it with. Okay.
Right.
And you move the Sharrow to the center versus on the side here, or is the Sharrow?
Well,
in
the
same
Sharrows,
location?
there's like regulation around how far apart they have to be, so there's a big stretch where you don't see one. And that's,
where they are positioned in the road. When you
they're
go
right
down.
in the middle, like that.
And are they always in the middle like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think when they're sharing the road, I think cars should be more courteous of the bikes, should be more aware. And on the sidewalk, the biker should be more aware of the pedestrians.
Definitely, and the ordinance tells you that.
And
Yeah.
that's very important.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've heard stories where the biker will come
Really fast.
barreling down the road and they can't really control, they run into this pedestrian, and which
Right.
is.
Right. Right.
Well, it's a matter of people, as I say,
We have
being
speed
considerate.
occurring
But,
from all users.
Can that sign, instead of being on the side of the building, can that be on the
Well, I'm saying it-
signpost?
That's what I'm
It's on Route 30
suggesting, that
there.
it would be on that signpost,
Yeah, okay.
right there,
Yeah.
where
That's on Route
Kathleen is
30?
hovering the,
That- I think that would
Right.
clarify for Victor what the
Yeah.
issue
It's
is.
gonna go on
Yeah.
here, I think. So it's gonna be at the edge of the
So
sidewalk.
if it was on the signpost, so it was clear that it was talking about the road, is that
Right.
reasonable for you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just concerned that it somehow suggests that something is permissible that isn't, and that's why I mean,
Yeah.
you want, when you have signs like that that have public safety for their goal, they should be as explicit as possible. Should be no ambiguity.
okay.
All right. As far as other things in the packet that we didn't talk about, for those that are watching and have had questions, they haven't received their tax bills yet, we do have the education tax rate. It's posted in our packet. I will call your attention to it out there in the audience, in that the non-residential education tax rate went up 6%. Which is 10.6 cents on 100. So the residential tax rate for education, the state education share went up 3.4 cents, or 1.87%. Other than that, I don't know if this is a record, Kathleen, but it's darn close to it. 48, actually, we started late, so
I thought we'll be done by 7:35, but
we were close, but we got onto a discussion of a very needed discussion of bikes for the biking community. So
So let's go to,
Festival on the Green. Everyone who's out there watching, you can get out and go to the last act of Festival on the Green.
Gentacorum, a Quebecois band, excellent tonight,
Oh, no way.
yes.
Okay. Look for a motion to
So moved.
adjourn.
I'll
Would we
second.
adjourn?
Moved and seconded, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? All right, we adjourned at 7:48.
Well, I
That
go
was
home
quick.
and